Hello, my name is Fred Vilbig. I'm an attorney in St. Louis, Missouri. I've been talking to a lot of people about what is being called the HHS mandate. It's surprising to me how many people either don't know what it is or misunderstand it. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk to you about the mandate and what it means to us as Catholics. I'd like to start with a story and an explanation. I was at a rally at a senator's office protesting the HHS mandate when a woman drove up, pulled a little past us, stopped and pointed at the bumper of her car. She had a bumper sticker on saying something like, "Would Jesus be opposed to health care for the poor?" I told her that the Catholic Church is not opposed to charitable health care, just health care that kills people. She muttered something unintelligible and drove off. There seems to be a misunderstanding of the Church's opposition to the HHS mandate. The Catholic Church is not opposed to charitable health care. In fact, you could say that we invented it. Modern hospitals began as houses of hospitality along pilgrimage routes in the Middle Ages. People making a religious pilgrimage to a shrine would stop for food and shelter. The sick would be cared for. Over time, people began just bringing their sick, particularly the poor, to these houses of hospitality to be cared for. Over time, communities of men and women developed to operate these houses, and these communities became religious orders. As the science of medicine developed, doctors were brought in. If people were wealthy, they would have their own doctors, so the hospitals that developed out of the Catholic tradition began principally to provide care for the poor. Today, people look at large Catholic hospitals and see big business, but that's not really fair. The hospitals want to provide the best possible care. To do that, they need to attract the best talent for the people they serve. But there are no shareholders being paid profits. Instead, the surplus is used to provide care for the poor. So Catholics are not opposed to providing health care for the poor. You could say we invented it, and to this day we continue to provide it to the extent that our resources allow. Now let us turn to the HHS mandate. The first question is, where did it come from? The HHS mandate is the outgrowth of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, which was signed into law by President Obama on March 23, 2010. This act has been commonly referred to as Obamacare, and I'll use that designation to refer to it. Normally, when a law is being debated, it's first referred to committees. In the committee, there are hearings where various provisions are discussed publicly as part of the democratic process. The committees then prepare reports on the law, which are then approved by the committee and typically published. These reports are what are often referred to as legislative history. When regulations are being promulgated by the appropriate governmental agency, the agency will rely heavily on the legislative history in preparing those regulations. The part of Obamacare that requires what we are referring to as the HHS mandate was not part of the bill that was originally considered by either the House or the Senate. It was only on the floor of the Senate that Maryland Senator Barbara Mikulski proposed an amendment that requires insurance companies to provide preventive services for women. Without any public hearing on the amendment, although there was debate on the Senate floor, the Democrat-controlled Senate passed the amendment largely along party lines. The amendment said that such preventive services would include all HHS-approved preventive care and screenings. Why this provision was not in the original law raises a lot of questions for me, since it then could have been subject to open, public debate instead of a debate controlled by the Democrats on the floor of the Senate. After Obamacare was signed into law, Secretary Kathleen Sebelius of the United States Department of Health and Human Services began the process of promulgating regulations implementing the law on an emergency basis. Instead of having the kinds of hearings that normally occur with the promulgation of administrative regulations, HHS referred the development of the regulations to an outside agency, the Institute of Medicine. In developing its guidelines, the Institute invited certain groups to assist them, but it appears that none of them represented the